Sup guys, Fat Archon here, bringing another 40k video. Today we're trying something a little different, something a little new. Basically gonna go over like my background with 40k, my history playing 40k, and some of the highs and lows of playing Warhammer over the years. So this will probably be a long one. You might want to like strap yourselves in, get some miles to paint, something along those lines. I know it's totally like left field. I don't normally do these kind of videos, so definitely let me know like your guys' thoughts. If you absolutely hate it, never want to see this kind of thing again, let me know. If you guys enjoy it, like let me know too. I don't have any more planned in the future or whatever, but you know, if people enjoy it, then I'll see what I can do. Regardless though, so what got this started in the first place, I've had a fair amount of people ask me about my background, ask me like when I started playing, what armies I used to play, all that sort of stuff. So I figured I'd get it all out there. I'm also going to do like a slight, sorta, like small history, a small recap of the editions that I can remember. I'll have you all know, I'm pretty old, so, I've been playing a long time. So, how I got into 40k in the first place, when I was a little kid, I think it was like 3rd grade or something, I had always lived next to card shops and that sort of thing. Like, my entire life, even now, I'm, like, within a mile of, like, multiple card shops. So, as a little kid, my brother got into Magic, and we would go, like, tinker around the card shop. I remember, this is a fun story. He bought a price gun, so he'd make little stickers with the prices on it, and then he'd go buy really crappy Magic cards, put them in sleeves, and he'd put prices on them, and he'd try to sell them to card shops. Dude, they never bought them. We were little kids. They were too smart for that, but we got some people to get close. But regardless, I remember seeing I want to say it was the 3rd edition, maybe it was like 5th edition, the box set. It had Space Marines, a Land Speeder, and then 20 Dark Eldar in it, and then had the little plastic trees or whatever. Well, I convinced my dad to buy me that because I thought they looked cool as hell, dude. And in fact, like, 40k, like, we'll get into it. 40k has influenced my life so much, but yes, I got him to give me that kit. To me, they're freaking toys, man. So I remember somehow I managed to put them together, somehow managed to not break them all. And yeah, dude, I would just use them as little, like, toy soldiers. That was, like, all they were to me. I remember a few years later, we ended up moving, and I'd kind of forgotten about 40k. Like, you know, again, they were just random toys, man. You guys know how kids are. Like, you know, we forget about them after like a month or whatever. But another card shop went there, and for some reason, I picked up an orc buggy. And that ended up being, like, my favorite, like, quote-unquote toy ever. And I went balls out. That was when I actually, like, painted it. I'm sure it looked, like, terrible, all that sort of stuff. But an orc buggy, I always consider that, like, my first, like, true model. Because then that's what, like, really flashed being into 40k. I remember, too, they had a box set for Imperial Fist. And so I was a huge, like, Imperial Fist fan. Even when I was, like, you know, like, 10 years old or whatever. I was huge into them. But the orc buggy kind of, like, set it off. I went back to the Space Marines, started collecting a few more. I think I bought like a Predator or something like that. I started like kind of building up my collection. Eventually, I finally had my first game. This was probably, I don't know, 99, 2000, somewhere around then. I convinced my best friend to get into 40k too. Somehow he had a small army, and so we had our first match ever, and I kid you not, this is how I remember the first match. I went first, and my very first shot blew up one of his tanks. I think it was a Dreadnought, actually. Blew up his Dreadnought, and it exploded. He rolled bad and it exploded, and it literally wiped out, I don't know, 3/4 of his army, maybe half. It wiped out like almost his entire army, and I basically won on the spot right there. And from then on, I remember thinking like, God damn, this was a fast game, you know? The complete opposite of how things really are. Yeah, I remember, yeah, the very first shot wiped out his entire army, and obviously I won, so I felt pretty good, and for sure, I started playing more Warhammer. Now, we sucked. We were kids. We were probably like, I don't know, 12 or 13, something at this point. So we sucked. So for us, it was still mostly for fun. But yeah, we'd start playing every couple weeks. Definitely started enjoying it. Started like building up our collection. This was back when you could buy blisters. So I remember you go to the card shop and it would just have walls of blisters, hundreds of little packs. And a blister, they were all pewter. The vast majority were pewter back then, which is basically metal. And yeah, dude, you just buy 1 or 2 models at a time. And it was awesome. I missed that, dude. You pick up more models for like $4 freaking bucks. It was beautiful, man. You need las cannons for your tactical squad or whatever. Bada bing, bada boom. Go to the card shop and buy a couple blisters. Yeah, I missed those days. I wish they still kind of did it. Now like the bare minimum is like 45 bucks. Like, man, I'm old. So I started playing more. I started building up my collection. I remember I got like a Space Marine Command Squad. Of course, I was Imperial Fist, man. The yellow looked terrible, by the way. Don't paint yellow if you're a kid. Well, I'd practice all the time, and I love my models, man. I was huge into 40k, even back then. So I remember I'd leave them in the living room. We had a pretty big house. We had like 2 living rooms, so it wasn't in anybody's way. It was like off to the side where nobody go to. Well, one day I went to school or went out to my friends, whatever it was, And I came back, and every single one of my models had either his head ripped off, or it was smashed in pieces, or it was like ripped in half, all that sort of stuff. And you guys gotta remember, the vast majority were pewter back then. They were metal. So trying to put them back together when they were twisted off or whatever, not really something you can do. Well, immediately I knew exactly who it was. It was my brother, who, I don't know if any of you have older brothers out there, especially ones that were dicks growing up. Yeah, he was definitely that. And I remember, of course, I confronted him, and he goes, "Ha, you play those stupid fucking models, ha ha ha." And, and then I told him, "Yeah, I do. By the way, that command squad you destroyed, that was $70 that you owe me." And he goes, "Huh, I'm not paying you that." And I knew that was, obviously the truth. He's never gonna pay me. So, my, half my army, didn't really, I tried to fix as many as I could, but I lost a boatload of models. Kind of lost my, like, enjoyment of 40k from that. Didn't play nearly as much after that. Yeah, dude, I lost all my, like, good units. Of course I wasn't gonna play, like, nearly as much. Well, back in my mind, I still loved it. Of course, like, girls start coming up, all this other stuff, so I wasn't doing 40k that much. But I ended up working on a farm a summer. I actually worked on a farm a bunch of summers as a kid, but I ended up working on a farm one of those summers. And so I got a nice, nice pile of cash at the end of it. And I ended up, I wanted to play Warhammer again, so I picked up a Tau army. So yes, I was a Tau communist at one point in my life. I'm pretty sure they were new. They were like newish at the point. And I've never been in an anime. To each your own. That's totally fine if you're into it. Me personally, it's not my style or whatever. Never been in an anime, but I love the battle suits. I thought they were badass. Of course, I painted them like the Tau Sept, the like brownish yellow, which I love. That's like such a good color. I hate that they switched over to white or whatever, but again, I'm an old timer. Don't mind me. So I started playing Tau for a bit. I was still a kid at this point. I was like 14 now. Still a kid at the point, so I wasn't that serious, any of that sort of stuff. Eventually, so this is a funny story. Eventually, I did end up selling it. I think I wanted to get in paintball at that point. I sold it for, I think a paintball gun. The Angel. If you guys know anything about it, that was like the best of the best of the best. But anyway, sold my army. And it was funny, because I remember I put on Craigslist or something, and this little kid, he was younger than me, kid and his dad came by, and you could tell the dad was having, like, none of it. The dad is totally like, "Oh my god, my son's a nerd. By the way, I'm paying, like, $400 for these freaking plastic toys. Like, what's going on?" But the kid was so hype, and of course I was hyped too, man. It's telling about all the different models, what all the loadouts did, how to run his commander. Like, oh yeah, man, it was beautiful. I loved it. But I'll never forget seeing that dad's face, just like pure disappointment the entire time. I'm sure some of us will have experienced that. So sold that army, but eventually, like, I'm old, but the time frames get a little mixed up, but eventually 7th edition came around. And 7th edition is when I got really hardcore into Warhammer. Now, I'll get into it in a moment, but if any of you know anything about, like, 7th edition, you know that's probably, like, the worst time to get into it. Granted, that is when 40k, like, started exploding in popularity, kinda. Definitely got a bit more popular. You go to, like, any card shop and people were playing, like, at that point on the weekends. But again, I started getting pretty hardcore into it, and I started getting into competitive play. That's when I started playing, like, tournaments and the sort. I believe I started with Dark Angels. That's who I started with. Definitely enjoyed them. But then I moved into Space Wolves really hardcore. Because in 7th edition, you still had, like, instant death. So if your strength was double their toughness, it didn't matter. As I remember, like, stuff's fuzzy. Didn't matter how many wounds they had, any of that sort of stuff. If they failed to save, they were just gone. They were removed from play. So, of course, you could have strength 10, like, frost hammers, whatever the hell they're called. You have strength 10 weapons on, like, all of your characters, bunch of Thunderwolf cavalry, all that sort of stuff. So, of course, me being a win-at-all-cost tournament player, best believe I was picking those up. Now, this does play into, man, converting models was such a pain in the butt back then. Back then, what you see is what you get. The WYSIWYG was very much, like, still a thing. And so every single loadout had to match up. So I remember, man, going out, had to buy, like, the frost pistols, had to convert the, I forget all the names. I haven't played Space Wolves in, like, many years, but they had the character, he's sort of like a Tech Marine, but wolfy, and he could ride a Thunderwolf cavalry. And he was, like, one of the best characters, as I recall. He was, like, one of the best characters. But they didn't come with Thunderwolves, so I had to convert them, glue them onto there. So figuring all that out took a lot of money and a lot of time. You had to, like, scrounge eBay hardcore to get all that stuff. Well, again, I started playing a lot of tournaments, a lot of competitive play. I thought I was good. Yeah, I thought I was, like, a great player or whatever. And then we have a huge store in our, like, main city in my state. I remember going down there and started playing in their leagues and whatnot, doing their tournaments. Well, eventually I ran into, I believe he was, like, the top rank Necron player, like, in the world at the time. It might have only been in my area, but as I recall, he was, like, the best in the world. And man, did I learn a lot. I learned that I ain't shit versus some of the players out there. Now, I will say, 7th edition, so Necrons were arguably kind of OP. As I remember, the Scarabs were like nuts. The Scarabs would just like eat any and everything. I also believe too they had the piercing rule or something. Anytime they rolled a 6, it would automatically do a wound or whatever. So like normally you couldn't hurt stuff that had double your strength. So if I had a T10 vehicle and you shot me with strength 4 weapons, you literally couldn't hurt me. Like literally, it was literally impossible. While Necrons ignored that. On 6s, they could still wound you. So they would just do mass firepower and just plink down all of your vehicles. Man, you could have a Land Raider. It didn't matter. They're going to plink it down. And Scarabs were obviously like ultra cheap little like hordes or whatever, so they were impossible to kill on your end, and then they would just like obliterate anything they got in contact with. Speaking of OP stuff, though, so 7th edition. So, any of you new players out there, my God, are you guys lucky that you didn't have to experience 7th edition? Just to go over a few of the things I can remember. So, it was like, dude, it was the era of busted combos. It was like, can my busted combo beat your busted combo? You got the basic stuff. So I had like D weapons. D weapons were big back then. D weapons, if you rolled, you had to roll certain, often a 6, but even on like a 4-up, it would like mess your stuff up. But you could shoot like, dude, you could shoot my Corn Lord Skulls. You shoot Imperial Knight. You could shoot whatever. You shoot the biggest model in the entire game. You could have a 2,000 point model on the table, and I shot it. If I roll a 6, boom, it's out of play. Doesn't matter how many wounds it's got. Doesn't matter how much toughness it's got. Doesn't matter any of that. I roll a 6, it's gone. So, Eldar were like infamous for that. They could spam D weapons. As I remember, Khorne Demons, their greater demons could spam them, so that was a big one. Back in 7th edition, you could choose your spells, your School of Magic, I believe they called it, and there was like 8 of them, maybe more than that. Certain armies would also have their own like schools of magic or whatever. Well, there's a few busted ones, man. Invisibility is the easiest to remember. Invisibility made it so that you could only take snapshots at people, and that meant that you could only be hit on a 6. Imagine this. So there's ways, oh dude, in 2-up rerollable invols and like jinx saves, that was like all the rage. So imagine this. How was it? It was the Tzeentch Demons. They would bring the Screamers, and they would attach a character to it. They could, demons got +1 to their invul save, so I believe they went to a 3-up, but then you could boost it to like a 2-up with a relic. So they'd have a 2-up save, oh, and they rerolled 1s, and then you cast invisibility on it. So now I'm only hitting on 6s. I'm sure they had some sort of debuff on the 2 wound, and then they had a 2-up rerollable invul save. And I'm probably forgetting like 3 other rules, and I'm not even joking. I remember for me, so I was still playing my Dark Angels. Black Knights had a Jinx save. Well, every like biker and planes had like Jinx saves. Normally it's a 5-up. Black Knights got a 2-up Jinx save, and you could re-roll it. So I had a 2-up reroll 1's Jinx save, and it was better than an invul. Jinx was different. It was a separate theme, so you couldn't ignore it. Like, yeah, I couldn't like get rid of my Jinx save. That was literally impossible. I remember, dude, it was so busted that even at tournaments, I would start saying, no, it's a 2-up to a 4-up. I'm not doing this 2-up crap. Like, no, it's unfair, dude. Because if you did the math, it was like, dude, you need like 1,000 freaking bolter shots just to kill like 2 of these guys. Or whatever. Yeah, it got ridiculous. They also had Decurion Detachments. That was what really like killed 7th edition, and you know, it both killed it and made it awesome. I miss Decurion Detachments, and what those were, if you brought a certain combo of units, so if you brought, I don't know, 2 HQs and 3 squads of Thunderwolf Cavalry, you'd get advance and charge on your entire army, like that sort of stuff. But then, obviously, like it's always been, it wasn't fair between armies. So I remember, Adeptus Mechanicus, they were fairly new, if I remember right. They got completely free war gear upgrades. So you could bring, and obviously you would, this is what you would do, you'd bring literally every single upgrade possible. You'd have over, I think it was like 1,000 points, or like 800 points of like free upgrades that you throw into your army. Space Marines, they got free transports, and that included Razorbacks, by the way. So every single Space Marine army you fought had like 8 to 12, they had infinite transports. Their entire army was transports, and I'm not making any of this stuff, but like look up Decurion sometimes, guys. It was ridiculous. So 7th edition was like the dumbest thing, and I'm forgetting so many busted combos. In fact, if you guys are, any of you like old timers out there, post like your favorite like busted combo from 7th below. I would love to like get a refresh of some of the dumb stuff that was out there. Now, 7th edition did have fun parts to it too. Armor facing mattered, which I really miss. Like, again, I'm a neckbeard or whatever. I miss the armor facing, so if you flanked a vehicle, they'd have lesser armor. Who thought? Realistic tactics or whatever. I thought that was cool. Morale was way more important. If I'm remembering right, if you failed morale, you would run towards the table edge, like D6 inches. you'd run towards the table edge, and if you touch it, if even a single model in squad touched that table edge by even like a quarter of a millimeter, poof, the entire squad was gone. So morale was like ultra important back then, ultra strong. Deep strike, when you'd deep strike somewhere, you would scatter. Same with artillery. Like, yeah, if you were shooting artillery, oh yeah, I'm forgetting. Dude, you had to guess the ranges for your weapons back then. You couldn't pre-measure how far your bolters shot. You would have to guess if they were within 24 inches. I'm not sure if I missed that, but, you know, that was kind of cool. But deep striking, yeah, you would scatter. And if you scattered into the unit, into any unit, or difficult terrain, all that sort of stuff, you'd start losing models there. There was a bunch of stuff that was actually kind of fun with 7th edition. Very, like, advanced, I guess you could say, but very killy. Yeah, 7th edition, though, you know, they were the best of times, they were the worst of times. Mostly the worst of times, truthfully. The busted combos was just way too much. This is when ITC, man, I'm having a brain fart, I forget what it stands for, but ITC became huge. If you go to tournaments, 100,000% they were using ITC rules, and if they weren't, somebody was just going to run that Screamer bomb. You know, it just got ridiculous. And ITC, basically what they did is, it was the players, they weren't affiliated with GW at the time. Unfortunately, they basically got bought out, but they weren't affiliated, and they would balance everything out. And my goodness, did they do a good job. They were, like, really fair on everything. They are the reason that, like, ruins, the first floor windows are always considered covered in the vast majority of games. Some people don't play with that rule, but most people do. They standardized the base sizes. They did like everything GW should have been doing. And honestly, if you ask me, ITC is like the reason that tournament play like continues to this day, and why it's basically the main way to play 40. That's debatable if it's the main way, but it is extremely popular to do like competitive events and that sort of stuff. ITC, you can thank them for all that. Regardless, though, so I was playing very competitively at the time, like that was my main focus, and I started branching out. So I remember I got into Adeptus Mechanicus myself. Dude, that War Convocation, that's what it was called, the one with all the free war gear. Like, come on, dude, that was too good. I'll be honest, though, that's not, and I swear, like, hand on Nurgle, that's not why I got into them. I got into them because they had the most beautiful models I'd ever seen. I thought that, yeah, dude, I thought they fit my style of, like, grimdark, like, perfectly to a T, just how their models looked, and I was so in love with them so much. And then, of course, I did have players saying that, yeah, you're win at all costs. You only got them because they have the free war gear. And no, dude, it wasn't true at all. That's not at all. But that did come up a lot. I think, honestly, I think you got 1,200 points in upgrades. So, dude, you'd be playing a 2,000-point game. 1750 was really popular. But you'd be playing a 17-point game. I would almost have double the points as you, technically. I remember, too, this is another, like, broken thing. Demons could bring in more demons for free. So they could, like, summon squads of demons. And depending on how well you rolled, you could bring in like just about anything. I'm pretty sure you could summon in even a greater demon completely free. So I remember playing this Nurgle player once, and dude, the game started like, oh, okay, this looks good. By the end of the game, the entire board was just covered in models, in demons or whatever. I like couldn't kill them. It was hilarious. But anyway, so I got into AdMech, started playing them a lot. This is when Imperial Knights came out. They were a pretty big deal. Flyers, I think Flyers came in like 6th edition, but 7th edition, they really took off. They were a big deal. But for real, I did have people like call me out all the time for being win at all costs, because War Convocation, it was considered like busted. And not to toot my own horn, I'll probably be doing this a few times, but I was a pretty good player. I'd already been playing a while. Most people were like brand new into 40k. I had an advantage because I had sort of been playing, since like 3rd edition, I don't really claim that I played way back in the 90s, because to me they were just toys, but you know, I was familiar with it. I read the rule books, all that sort of stuff. But people kept calling me out and I hated it, and I kept winning all the time. It was almost getting like too easy or whatever. So I looked and like, what would be like the hardest army to play? And at the time, the one that I figured was Dark Eldar. And Dark Eldar, they became my new love. If you couldn't tell from my name, the channel name, like Dark Eldar, 100,000%, even to this day, they are like one of my favorite armies. They have the best fluff. They have the best look. Now, I'll admit, back then, the look was kind of lame, dude. If you guys haven't seen the old school, like, Cabalites or whatever, look them up, man. They were like the dumbest thing ever. In fact, Dawn of War. Dawn of War is like a perfect example of how silly they looked. It was terrible. But man, they were so bad and I freaking loved it. I remember you'd go into a game just expecting to like die. Not to lose, but to die. So I remember Raiders, man, a single shot all the time. Somebody shoot your Raider once and it'll blow up. So you would always bring redundancy to the max. So you'd never bring just one Raider. That would be crazy. You'd bring like 6 of them, as many as you could. Because again, dude, they were just going to blow up. Even if bolters were shooting at them, like your Raiders are going to blow up. I loved it, man. I think it did make me a better player to learn how to play like the really hard army. Because they truly were that bad in 7th edition. I don't remember what their Decurion was, but I'm sure it was terrible. Like nobody played Dark Eldar. Dark Eldar were a really rare army army as I remember. Nobody played them, and their models were disgustingly ugly, like I mentioned. So yeah, nobody played Dark Eldar, so I loved it. Nobody really knew my rules. That was sort of an advantage there. And yeah, man, you got to prove that you're a good general. I loved it. They were still speedy little devils, still had good firepower. They were just like the flimsiest things you'd ever seen in your life. Eventually, I branched into Eldar, so I started playing some of them. I believe that's when Yanid became a thing, or Yakarn, whatever. Again, I haven't played some of these armies in a while, but I believe Yanid became a thing near the tail end of 7th edition, so I picked up their box set, started playing them. Eldar were, as always, pretty busted, so I remember I started playing them at tournaments, all that sort of stuff. But I will be honest, 7th edition really ground on me, and it ground on a lot of people. Man, it was such a terrible time. Stuff was so busted. Even if you try to have like a fun casual match, you'd have to like make an agreement with your opponent beforehand. Like, all right, we're not bringing anything stupid, right? Like, okay, all right, just want to be sure, you're not stacking on 3 different spell schools and giving you guys like toughness 10, rerollable 2-ups, all that sort of silly stuff, right? Okay, cool. So I started playing less and less, and truthfully, I noticed with a lot of people quit going to like tournaments so much, because again, it was just so busted, and if you wanted to be top level, if you wanted to be like ranked ITC and all that stuff, dude, you had to be dropping thousands and thousands of dollars to get like the best army. I don't think they had the rule of 3 back then, so you could just can you guys imagine 7th edition, no rule of 3, and just like the most busted stuff ever? I'm telling you guys, it was redonks. But luckily, the redemption arc came, so 8th edition finally dropped, and we had what was called the Index era. So every single army, their codex went away, and every single army got updated with an index that yeah, everybody shared. I should mention, on the note of 7th edition, there were certain armies that I'm not sure they ever got a codex for all of 7th edition. They were still using their 6th edition codexes. I think Sisters of Battle were still using like their 5th edition codexes, something like that. So you can imagine how like unbalanced it was depending on the army you were playing. It was really bad. So 8th edition came though, dude, and it reinvigorated my love in 40k like so much. If 8th edition didn't exist, I might not be like doing this right now. I might not be into 40k anymore. So again, they had the Index era, so it was awesome, dude. Everybody had fairly balanced rules, and I do think, honestly, aside from a few busted things, there was a few mistakes that they didn't catch or whatever, I think that was about the most balanced Warhammer 40k has ever been in its history. Debatably now, 40k is pretty balanced in 10th edition, but 8th edition was way up there, man. The only busted one I can think of was Razorwing Phlox. I'm sure there's others, by the way, but Razorwing Phlox for for Drukhari, they were like the most efficient model ever. I think it was like 12 points for like 8 wounds. It was something ridiculous like that. And so you would literally just cover the board in Razorwing Phlox. There was still no rule of 3 at this point. You would just cover the board in Razorwing Phlox, and you basically would automatically win. Nobody. It was impossible to wipe you out. So they started topping like big tournaments, like majors and that sort of stuff. And luckily, this was when GW finally stepped around and they started like FAQing and like nerfing stuff. So they fixed that pretty quick. Yeah, back to 7th edition again. GW, like, you'd be lucky to get an FAQ, like, maybe once a year. Like, maybe. Like, you'd be really lucky if that happened. And even then, it'd be, like, hidden in a white dwarf somewhere. So, 8th edition, I was super in love with my Drukhari. For sure, this is when I started getting, like, good at tournaments. Like, I was already, like, pretty decent. Like I said, with the AdMech, I was, like, winning a lot or whatever. But if I went against, like, the best players or whatever, yeah, dude, they're gonna kick my butt. Well, 8th edition, this is finally when I started getting pretty decent. Drukhari, they got like a really good buff, but they weren't that strong yet, and I still loved them, so they were still like the finesse army. They were still like the hard-to-play army, the one that people would warn new players not to play because they're so hard. They were still like that, so I enjoyed it. But I believe Death Guard came out in 8th edition. Maybe it's the tail of 7th edition, but at some point, Death Guard came out. I saw them. I'd always loved Chaos. I always thought they had beautiful looking models. That's what I was all about with them. I saw Death Guard, like a lot of people. I fell in love with their look, and so that's when I got into Chaos, was 8th edition. I started with the Death Guard. I didn't play so much like tournament with them. I was still mainly doing the Drukhari, a lot because I wasn't familiar with Death Guard, and as I remember, they weren't the strongest in like the Index era. But so I started having tournament success mainly with the Drukhari. This is when I started like winning GTs and like RTTs. Those were no thing. Yeah, winning GTs. I'd go like out of state, so I'd go with my friends. We'd like rent a hotel out of state, stay for the weekend, play a bunch of games there. So definitely started improving. I wanted to be a ranked ITC player. That was always like my goal. Unfortunately, I never really like stuck with that enough. I never like submitted my results, all that sort of stuff. I used different names everywhere. So unfortunately, I never lived that dream. But regardless, was very much like having fun there. Drukhari though, so eventually their codex dropped, And man, they got really freaking good, and they fit the style I played perfectly. My style normally at the time was to bring as much shooting as humanly possible. So I remember like my average list would have like 22 Dark Lances. That was like what I was shooting for. And so, dude, if you brought like a vehicle or an elite army, I was just gonna table you. Like that's almost always how it went. Like, and that was my strategy too. Elite armies, I'd table. Other armies, I'd just try to outscore you or whatever. And yeah, I had really good success there. But again, dude, people start calling me win at all costs again. I got so upset. I hate being called that. Like, when you're going to tournaments, it's true, man. I'm not at a tournament to like let you win and be all lovey-dovey or whatever. Even though I do try to be really nice, and I am like play by intent, and I'll let you take back mistakes and all that sort of stuff. But you better believe that like I'm there to win, dude. In the end, I'm gonna win this game. That's just how just how it's gonna go. I remember people. So Drukhari, dude, they and still do have the giant sails on like their raiders and all that sort of stuff. So that went both ways. People could shoot me all the time. I couldn't hide behind like anything. I don't think they had obscuring at this point. I don't think, did 8th edition have obscuring? But either way, you could like shoot me over cover 24/7, dude. It was no thing. But guess what? That means I get to shoot you through cover. So I remember some dude, man, he was like whining. He was like crying like a little baby because like I kept whooping his butt. And I'll be honest, so this guy he was win at all costs too, I guess you could say. You could tell he was in it to win it. I think he was doing Tyranids, and he was like, hardcore trying to beat me. This was at a GT, and this was an out of state. It was a big deal to me. And yeah, dude, I remember thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put this guy in his place. If this guy's gonna be a little baby like this, I'm putting in his place. So no mercy whatsoever. No more takebacks, none of that stuff. And you gotta remember, I had fly, so oh man, it was beautiful. So I'd like fly on top of ruins, so I'm getting line of sight on his blob they had hidden or whatever. And I remember this is what killed him. I remember they had wobbly model. I put one on top of the ruins, and I had to like balance it, and he's totally, and no joke, like he's totally like, you know it's not gonna sit there. You know it's gonna fall off. You know you can't do that. Just balancing. I take my hands off. I think I counted to 3, and I go, wobbly model. And oh my god, dude, he got so upset. So whooped his ass. That was beautiful. That made my day. Yeah, good times. But regardless, so played a lot of Drukhari. I got upset though that people call me win at all costs all the time. It was annoying. Because even casual games, I mean this like from the bottom of my heart. I don't like stomping newbies. That's like the most boring thing ever. Why would I ever stomp newbies? Also, like maybe they won't want to play Warhammer after that. It's like the worst thing you could do, guys. Don't ever just stomp new players. That's like the worst thing you could possibly do. It's not fun for either of you. And like, dude, do you really want to ruin somebody's day like that who's just trying to have fun? So I always bring like stupid, dumb lists to like casual matches or whatever. But I don't know, maybe it's in my DNA or they're just not good. It's hard not to like beat them unless I really purposely not. So I'd still get called out all the time, and it was annoying. So I'm like, what's another army I can play that's like hard? At that point, I remember Gene Stealer Cult were looking terrible. And my God, were they, man. I didn't play them long because they were so bad. For me, I didn't really mesh with their playstyle. I don't think I ever won a single game of GSC, even with casual players, so it was kind of perfect there in like that sense. Really, though, what I did get into, I branched into Demons. And the whole reason was I wanted something to ally with my Death Guard. Demons became my new love, dude. They got like beautiful models. They have such good fluff behind them. That's what really gets me into Demons. Such wonderful fluff behind all of them. Every single individual unit has a fun little story behind it, man. It's one of my favorite things. I've actually been thinking of doing a video at some point that goes through all their different lore, because again, dude, it's some of the best writing like GW's ever done, if you were to ask me. Of course, though, so I get into Demons, mainly Nurgle, but then, of course, I'm like, oh, well, Slanesh looks pretty badass. Khorne, he's a cool guy. Tzeentch is, he's all right. So picked up all the Demons. Of course, then that got me to get into Chaos Space Marines. Mainly because I wanted something to ally my Demons with. I didn't just want to do Nurgle with the Death Guard all the time. So that's when I got into CSM and like all the Chaos factions. Was near the tail end of 8th edition, I'd say, maybe halfway through or near the tail end. I got hardcore into Chaos, and they didn't seem as busted as the Drukhari at the time, so I didn't feel like bad bringing them to like events and casual matches and all that sort of stuff. Started having a lot of fun with them. They became my second new love. Drukhari still got a special place in my heart, but since then I've mainly been playing the Chaos factions, and very much, dude, I'm glad I did. My favorite thing about them, first of all, they look awesome. For CSM, actually, that's right, so I wanted to ally in Demons, but I saw the Lord Discordant. No joke, I went out and bought 3 of those that night, the moment I saw it. I think it was a new kit when I saw it. Yeah, I bought 3 of them off like eBay, I think, $70 each, and that was like the core of my CSM army, and pretty much every single list I ran after that had 3 Lord Discordants in it. Well, finally, ninth edition came around, and ninth edition, it started out fine. And we didn't have the index reset, which kind of broke my heart, but it was understandable. I knew that they weren't going to do it. So we still had our codexes. So you definitely had the, yeah, did you get an early 8th edition codex? Ooh, sorry, Death Guard. Like, that kind of sucks for you, man, because we're all using the new hot shit. But regardless, like, it was okay. It started off okay, in my opinion. Very much, I kept doing tournaments. Very much, I was like way into doing the tournaments and all that sort of stuff. I was playing probably twice a week. Yeah, every Wednesday and Saturday and sometimes even Sundays. So sometimes 3 times a week. I was playing at local card shops, different card shops, but I'd be playing. So yeah, I was like a fixture at some of the local stores. I know I do sound like really competitive. I am really competitive. I know that sounds like I am win at all costs, but generally I'm not, guys. If you're a newer player, I'm not going to kick your butt. I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to try to give you tips. I'm not going to, like, go all out on you and all that sort of stuff. So, like, yeah, dude, I have a lot of fun with people, even if we weren't having, like, a competitive match that time. But for sure, man, if we were playing a tournament, I'm there to win it. I'll be nice to you and all that, so I'm going to joke a lot. I love making jokes and all that sort of stuff, but I'm going to win it. Well, we had a tournament coming up at like, my main store. So one of them was, like, the main store. That's where I was always at. We had a game coming up, and man, okay, so this gets into my worst experience of Warhammer 40k ever. I got to meet the biggest cheater I've ever met in my life. Now, cheaters happen. From time to time, you do see cheaters. Usually it's just every now and then, and usually you just, like, politely, not even politely, but you sort of hint that, like, dude, I know you're cheating, so, like, do you mind rolling your dice where I can see them? Like, you know, usually you can, like, nip it in the bud. Well, this guy was like, dude, yeah, there was no saving this guy. So, I got lucky, though. We agreed to do a practice game the week before. I think it was a week before the actual tournament. We agreed to do a practice game, and so he was playing orcs, and I was playing chaos. Dude, okay, really briefly, I'll go over my list real quick. I had, I think, a Demon Prince of Nurgle, and then 2 Lord Discordants. Remember, Lord Discordants, I loved them. They were incredibly good in 9th edition, by the way. Like, don't get me wrong, they were incredibly freaking good. The Nurgle Demon Prince, you give him a relic that every single hit automatically wounded, and you ignore any wound caps. There's a lot of models, and this is why I didn't like 9th edition. Stuff got really killy. We'll get into that in a second. But you would ignore wound caps. So, like, his Gazcool, you could normally only do a max of 3 wounds per phase, something like that. Nope, I ignore that, and every single hit wounds. Oh, and I'm going to reroll all my hits, by the way. So I basically always, I had 7 hits, so it was 21 damage that you'd have to save every single time. That was just, like, guaranteed. Also, again, this was a tournament list. Also, I was playing Creations of Bile, so I automatically fought on death. Automatically. There was no rolling dice. I just fought on death. So you kill my Demon Prince in melee, take 21 damage. Doesn't matter. My Lord Discordance, one of them was Khorne, and he had a relic where you get plus D3 damage on all of his attacks, or his main attacks. So his main attacks for 3 plus D3 damage, and then, that's right, I gave him a Warlord trait where hits of 4-up automatically wounded. So I had one guy, Demon Prince, every single hits wounds, and then my Lord Discordant, every hit of a 4-up automatically wounds. I'm pretty sure I got to reroll 1s or all that stuff, so he got a boatload of damage. So he was my Anti-Imperial Knight, that was his main thing. And I don't remember what the 3rd Lord Discordant had, but I can assure you that it was pretty busted too. I can assure you it was quite strong. But every army had this sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong, every army had ridiculous stuff like that. 9th edition was sort of going back to, like, the 7th edition route. But regardless, so I digress. So he had orcs, and I told him, of course, like everybody, you tell him what all your units do before the game. And I specifically told him, yeah, be careful of this Nurgle Demon Prince right here, because this was a practice game. I wasn't just trying to whoop his butt, so of course I'm trying to help him. Be careful of this Demon Prince right here. He ignores wound caps, and every single hit wounds. Like, he's gonna try to eat your Gazcool, so be really careful with it. And the guy, he's just like, okay, cool. And then he shows me his list. We start playing, and I start noticing I didn't know orcs very well. I don't play orcs. I've never played orcs. I've owned the orc buggy when I was a little kid, but I've never played them, so I don't know them that well. I know enough, but, not a lot. I will say, too, you guys, I read every single Goonhammer article that goes out on, like, codexes and stuff, so that I know the basics about your army. So I knew enough. Well, a lot of stuff this guy was doing was really questionable. What was he doing? I don't remember too many specifics for the practice game, but I remember just stuff that I knew was wrong. I knew that, like, he was giving buffs to, like, certain units I knew shouldn't get it or whatever. But again, it was a practice game. I wasn't sure, so I didn't really say anything. I thought, of course he knows his army better. Of course I'm not going to say it. Well, what finally happened that made me realize this guy's like a dingus, I finally did what I said I was going to do, man. I got my Demon Prince into combat with this freaking Gazcool, and of course I deleted him. And the guy goes, nope, that's not how that works. And I'm like, how what doesn't work? And he goes, you don't ignore wound caps. That's not all how that works. GW doesn't do that rule. I'm like, yeah, they do. Here, let me bust out my codex. I'll show you the rule right here. And literally, like black and white, show him the rule. And he goes, no, that's not how that works. And I'm like, that's like 100% how it works, man. And then like, dude, it took like 5 minutes. Had to like Google stuff and all. And like, I'm showing him all these ways. And finally, he's like, I don't care. Like, you know, that's not how that works. Like, whatever. Just, whatever. Let's just keep going. Well, there was that, so definitely I'm noticing, like, okay, this guy's, like, definitely got some issues, and that happens in the community. 99% of people are fine, but, that weirdos come up from time to time. But then he had all these other, like, red flags coming up, and I knew, like, I don't know, I just knew fate was gonna make me fight him at the tournament the next week or whatever, because orcs were strong, man. Yeah, orcs were really strong, so there was a good chance I was gonna see him at the tournament. I will say, me being Creations of Bile is almost a non-contest. Like, how's the melee army gonna beat automatically fighting on death? Is that even possible? Like, I don't know. But I went home, and I kid you not, guys, I learned that Orc Codex through and through. I learned that Orc Codex, like, better than my own freaking army. Literally every day, I was reading it to, like, memorize everything, because I wanted to put this guy in his place. And for sure, I noticed all these things he was cheating on. I wish I could remember the specifics, but basically everything. Well, I do remember more from the actual tournament game. So, all right. The week goes by, I memorize his army, I'm prepared to go, I'm gonna go kick some butt. It was a real fun tournament. Who'd I fight first? I fought a little kid with his Death Guard first, and I did go. I went easy on the guy. I had to make sure I get my score high, but we had a really fun match, man. That was a blast. I love that. I still see that kid from time to time. I love him. I gave him some Beasts of Nurgle, all that sort of stuff. I had a blast doing that. Then I fought Imperial Knights. That was a close match, but man, did those Lord Discos come in handy. And then finally, of course, I think it was the top table, freaking that Orc player, dude. And you know what I felt terrible about? I knew he's a cheater. And right before he fought me, he fought that same kid I'd fought. And I felt so bad because I'm like, I bet he's taking so much advantage of that little kid. Ugh, motherfucker. But, so we play. And of course, dude, I knew this guy was going to be shiesty, so I memorized his list, too. I had his list on my phone, in fact, so I could check everything he had. So I think I went first, and I had a Helldrake, because I was cool like that. And Helldrakes, they were awesome, dude. They deleted characters left and right, especially bad players like this Orc player. If you didn't screen your character correctly, you put him behind your squad like normal, bad move, man. So I did what I always did. I put my Helldrake behind him, flamed the shit out of him, and then I was going to charge him. And what did he say? He goes, nope, I got the cyborg armor. I got a 4-up Feel No Pain. Nope, no you don't, man. So I pull out his list, and I go, oh, I don't see it on your army list. Are you sure about that? And he's like, oh, oops, I play a few different lists. I forgot, whatever his reason was. Oh, so this is an extremely important detail. The TO, the tournament organizer, he was sick. I'm pretty sure he had COVID that week. So our normal TO wasn't there. Somebody like sort of volunteered, but he was playing matches. And I do remember coming to him for like something, and he was very hands off. Like you tell he didn't want to be involved with it. So we were basically all left to our own. So yeah, I do want to mention, normally I would have brought a TO and like, you need to kick this guy out. But not in this case. So first of all, so he had his list, was wrong. I remember he would still argue with all the stuff my units would do. So yeah, the Demon Prince went in, he started to argue with me again. Yes, he did. I remember he started arguing with me again, and we brought in the pseudo-TO, and luckily he wasn't hands off on this. He's like, no, dude, like, yeah, that's 100% how it works, or nobody would run that. Like, duh, like, why is it in the rulebook if nobody's using it? What else did he cheat on? He cheated on, well, he had a big cheat that I'm going to get to in a second. He was trying to cheat on all this stuff, and I would call him out every single time. Again, I memorize his rules, man. I remember he'd try to say the Gazgul would buff a certain unit. I was like, nope, that only works on boys, or whatever it was. It only works on those certain units, doesn't work on those guys. And you could tell this guy was starting to realize, like, uh-oh, I met my match. Well, finally, so, of course, he did what every Orc player does. He called WYSIWYG, I think it was first turn. Maybe second turn, but he called his WOG early. Well, I think turn 3 or whenever, later on the match comes around, he tries to call his WAG again. This is how bad a cheater this guy was. He tried to call it again. And dude, I was fed up at this point. So I'm like so embarrassed, and I feel bad to this day. I like feel bad about it. No, dude, I called him out. I started yelling at this guy. Nope. And I started listing all the things you're doing. You're trying to cheat on your list. You're trying to cheat with your rules. Now you're trying to say you WOG twice when every single Orc player on the planet WAGs the first turn. Why wouldn't you WOG the first turn? Are you trying to tell me that you're a bad Orc player and you're at the top table? Like, what's going on? I was calling him out on everything. You could tell the entire, like, I was yelling. I felt bad. the entire store was all staring at us. And, yeah, dude, so it got ugly. And then, of course, we both went really quiet. We just finished the game. I whooped his ass, of course. We just went really quiet. We tried to make up after, and for sure, I didn't want, oh man, I remember that was the worst part. I didn't want bad blood, especially at my main store. That guy was there fairly often too. I felt so bad. I remember we went out back, we smoked a cigarette and kind of made amends, so that was cool. We like shook hands. He, made up whatever excuses. Of course he's lying. He was trying to cheat. Again, I genuinely do feel really bad for that kid because I know he took advantage of him. You can just guess how badly he took advantage, and I can only imagine all the other games, everybody else that he's played over the years, how much he screwed them over. Now, I'll be honest, man, I quit going to that store for a long time, for a very long time. In fact, to this day, I don't really go to that store very often. I did hear, so some good things did come out of it. I put a big post on Reddit, and it, like, blew up, man. It blew up way bigger than I anticipated. I tried to look it up, but I deleted it later. I didn't want that guy to read it and, like, feel terrible about himself, so I ended up deleting it. I wanted to look it up because I had all the juicy details, and I could have figured out, like, yeah, the specifics for this video. But the TO saw that post, and really, it had like 1,000 upvotes, man. It got way bigger than I anticipated, which again was, I was like, oh shit, that means this guy might see it. If he's on this subreddit, he's gonna see that. But the TO read it, and I remember, yeah, he reached out to me on Discord. So, what happened? I explained everything, and for sure, I'm like, don't ban the guy or whatever, but, this isn't acceptable. We can't have, like, cheaters, like, coming to tournaments. It makes it no fun for anybody. I brought up that kid, all that sort of stuff. Well, luckily good came out of it because he implemented a play nice policy, which probably should have had from the first place, but we had a play nice policy, and he said that he'd be way more, like, hands-on, so I was pretty stoked that, yeah, even out of the worst situations, like, some goods can still come out of it. Now, I do want to go onto the topic of, like, bad apples or, like, bad sports, cheaters, specifically, that sort of stuff. So guys, 40k is a nerdy game. It's becoming more mainstream. Wait until the freaking Amazon show comes out. I hope you guys don't hate that too much, because for sure, we're going mainstream if we aren't already. But, it's a nerdy game. So you definitely bring out the, what am I looking for? People who don't have the best social skills, people who, yeah, man, people got, like, Asperger's, like, all that sort of stuff. It's not that uncommon. But that's one of the best parts of 40k, and like any nerdy, like, subculture, whatever. Dude, we are the most accepting people on the planet. I don't care what you look like, what, like, your creed is, and what you believe in, any of that sort of stuff. I could care less, man. We're here to play a game, have fun, talk about lore, talk about fluff. There's so many people, especially at the card shops, who I would never interact with, like, outside of the card shop. Like, they're totally not the kind of people I hang out with. No, dude, they become some of my best friends through Warhammer 40k. Now, for the cheaters or whatever, like, yeah, it comes up from time to time, but they are incredibly rare, guys. They are so rare. I do think it's important that you stand up for yourselves. If you ever run into a cheater, don't, like, yell at them like I was, but somebody's screaming in the background. One second. Can you guys hear that? Somebody was, like, screaming bloody murder. What the fuck? Anyways, alright, I lost my train of thought, you fucker. But for the cheaters, they are so incredibly rare, guys. They are so incredibly rare. I've been playing, like, 25 years, however long, like, multiple decades I've been playing. I can only think of a few cheaters. There's that guy for sure. I had some other guys who were like, yeah, dude, you could tell they were rolling their dice, like, fishy behind terrain where you couldn't see it. Another fun one I had some guy, this guy was just a jerk, and he was, like, the win-at-all-cost player. Like, everybody knew him as he was, like, that guy. Yeah, don't be that guy. This guy was that guy at the store. Like, nobody would play him because we knew he was such a jerk. Well, I played him. And what did he do? He had, like, a knight with his army, and he shot me from over a house, which is fine. You know, true line of sight, you could see me, so he shot me. Well, my turn came around, and it's time to shoot back, and for some silly reason, he's like, you can't see me. I'm like, what? You have a freaking Imperial Knight, like a 30-meter tall Imperial Knight. Of course I can see you. And also, you literally just shot my same unit last turn. Like, what's going on here? And, yeah, I thought that was funny. But even though I have these stories, again, I've been playing so long, I have, like, thousands of games under my belt. I can think of, like, 4 cheaters in the history of it. Again, I think it's really important that you guys stand up for yourselves. I think don't let them get away with it. That just, like, encourages it. That just, like, enables them or whatever. But politely, you know, whatever the issue is, just bring it up. Hey, would you mind rolling your dice where I can see them? I just want to be, like, careful. You know, I just want to be sure everything's on the up and up. If somebody gets their rules wrong, waha PD, man, that's fantastic. You say, oh, do you mind if I look this up real quick? Take me just 10 seconds. If they say no, just stop the game right there. But nobody's going to say no. If they did, that would be really weird, wouldn't it? Just pull up the rules and check. And again, be nice about it. Be like, ooh, oh, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it used to work like that, but apparently it works like this now. I do think it's ultra important you stand up for yourselves. You don't want them going screwing somebody else over, but stand up for yourselves, guys. I've done that my entire life. It pays off really well. Not just 40k, but everything. stand up for yourself, people will walk all over you otherwise. Back to my point, 40k is like the kindest community out there. Do not anticipate running into cheaters a lot. I've heard enough, that'd be terrible. I have heard people, yeah, dude, they're like afraid of it. They're like nervous. Ooh, am I gonna run into cheaters at the tournament or whatever? No, you're not. Almost surely you're not. And especially if there's TO there, no, you're not at all. Genuinely, don't ever worry about that. There's really not that many out there. I wouldn't sweat it whatsoever. All right, though. But, so, you know, I had that really fun game. That was like, yeah, my worst 40k experience. I hated yelling in the store, all that sort of stuff. It sucked. But time goes on, you know, time heals, all that sort of stuff. 10th edition finally arrived. So this is what? This is like a year ago or whatever. 10th edition arrived. I had very, very, very mixed feelings when it first came out. So again, guys, I'm an old crusty neckbeard. I've been playing since way back in the day. I like my old complicated rules. Advanced complicated rules, like I'm all about it. I guess before I get into 10th edition, let me touch on 9th edition. 9th edition made the same mistakes as 7th edition, or a lot of the same mistakes as 7th edition. And one of the things I really hated is GW just start using a band-aid fix for everything. So, okay, everything's way too killy because we made all the profiles like way too busted. By the way, like every codex we release, you better believe that your army is going to become the best army in the game. That was like expected. When your codex came out, you suddenly became the top army in the game. Like, how dumb is that? But, so they need a band-aid fix. So they're like, okay, well now we're going to start giving, we do too much damage, so now every key unit gets -1 damage. Yeah, that's what we'll do. You get -1 damage. So literally every army, all their key units start getting the -1 damage. Well, that became too good, so now they're like, well, okay, we gotta ignore wound caps, and ignore, like, damage modifier ignoring effects. So now, yeah, your units can ignore that now. Boom, now every single army was getting that. It was getting so annoying, man. It was like, yeah, they had to top the last busted rule with, like, a more busted rule. And people start getting annoyed, just like 7th edition. People start calling out all the time. I remember I'd post on Reddit all the time, and we'd have long discussions on, like, GW's doing it again. They're, you know, they're handing out the ignore caps this time. I'm wondering what's going to be next, like, all that sort of stuff. So that was a great thing about 10th edition coming out, is they reset all that. And actually, before I get to my, like, initial impressions and the issues I had with that, or my bad initial impressions, I should say, I'll get into my good initial impressions. Thank you so much, GW, for reducing the killiness of everything. Stuff was getting way too powerful, and it was getting redonks again. We were repeating 7th edition, don't ever do that again. So the fact that they brought, like, armor piercings, like, really low across the board, damage is fairly low across the board, getting buffs to hits and rerolls especially, all that sort of stuff, like, isn't nearly as common as it used to be. So I applaud GW for that. They did really well in that regard. Now, I will say I did have some really bad, like, takes on it. Well, not bad takes, but really bad, like, feelings on it. So a big one was restricting the unit sizes. So now they have set unit sizes. So, for example, Legionaries, you can only bring 5 or 10. Dude, it used to be, for the history of 40k up until now, you would pay per model, so it wasn't per unit. So, dude, you could bring a 4-man squad all the time. You could bring an 8-man squad if you want to, and I would do that constantly. My tournament list, the one with the 3 Disco Lords or whatever, I would bring, I believe it was 9 possessed, because that gave me the points to, like, buy my relic, or basically kept me under the 2k points or whatever. I loved it. So that kind of killed me that they were, like, doing mandatory unit sizes. That was kind of lame. The restricted loadouts, the what comes in the box is what you get. So okay, so me, again, I'm crusty neckbeard, so I hated it, man. Because, come on, I've spent probably, honestly, like, over the many, many years, I probably spent, like, $1,000 on random bits and all this stuff. You gotta remember, 3D printing didn't exist back then. So I've spent a lot of money, and that's not even counting all the time and effort I put into, like, you know, taking apart my models, magnetizing them, all that sort of stuff. Like, doesn't even, like, touch on that. So I felt, like, really screwed over by that. I felt, like, personally attacked, you know? But they got rid of all those loadout options. Also, certain units got, like, really gimped. Chaos Terminators. You used to be able to bring Meltas, or Combi Meltas, excuse me. You used to be able to bring Combi Meltas with every single one of them, man. Now you have a Terminator unit that, like, me personally, I've always considered Terminators, like, inefficient. Well, you give them a melt-up, well, now they're not that inefficient, man. Now I can kill elites and, like, vehicles like it's no thing. Nope, that all goes away. Now they're just a combi bolter of all things, even though you can literally see a melta on there. So yeah, that really, like, rubbed me the wrong way. And to this day, I don't really like the charge and fight phase, like, restrictions they got now. The having to go to base, not only is it, like, way too restrictive, in my opinion, not only does it mess with, like, dude, the charge and the fight phase was, like, the most, like, we lost a lot of advanced rules or whatever. I love the strategy and the tactics behind, like, playing 40k. Well, the fight and the charge phase, that's where, like, the really good generals divide themselves from, like, the normal people. So, like, you could really prove that you 2 are ultra good from all the shenanigans, all the extra movement, all that stuff you get out of the fight phase. Nope. Now you gotta go into base to base. Beyond those, though, what I hate, it confuses people, dude. Not only myself, but even new players. I've seen new players all the time complain about it. I really wish GW would fix that. Now, I have seen, you know, I don't hate it as much as I used to. I kind of understand what they're going for. In a sense, it simplifies things. In a sense, you just go as, you know, close to it as you can. But a lot of times it's illogical. Because, like, you know, I'm like a 10th of an inch closer to this unit, but of course my Terminator would go to these guys and chew them up. Why would he, like, turn his back to these guys and go that way? So I'm yeah, for the most part, I don't like it. I kind of understand, but for the most part, I don't like it. So those were my initial thoughts, though. How I feel now, so the unit sizes, it's whatever. I think you can technically bring like a reduced unit size, but you still have to pay like the full points for it, so it's not really something you do. Like, nobody really does that, unless you need like room in a Rhino or something like that. But it's not the worst thing ever. It's kind of understandable. The loadout options, alright, I'll be real with you guys. I hate it with all my heart. But I understand it. I understand it for new players. New players getting into it, they don't have to go eBay hunting. They don't have to do all this funny stuff. They don't have to, yeah, whatever. What I hate, though, and what I do think they need to change the point values for freaking loadouts. If you don't, man, everybody's just going to bring the best loadout, and all the others, you might as well not even put them in a box. Why would I bring, like, bolt pistols when I get plasma pistols for free? It makes zero sense whatsoever. It also makes balancing units, like, terrible. Maybe it's a bad unit, but they have one busted, like, weapon profile. Well, now, you gotta pay the extra tax on top of it, because it's impossible to bring the bad version. It's such terrible, like, rule writing on their part. I really wish they'd fix that. That said, the fixed loadouts, I hate it, but I understand it. It's good for new players, and going forward, it's a good thing overall, I think. But the points, they need to figure out the points value on it. Some sort of way to, like, balance it out. I guess, like, the Tau Codex, how they're doing the Crisis suits. No, that's a terrible way to do it, because then you turn one unit profile into 3 unit profiles, maybe even more than that, so that's probably not the best way to go. For the fight and charge phase, yes, I still feel that way. I still hate the having to move to the closest unit and go and base to base. That's the big one that I really hate. I don't really like care for those. Otherwise, though, like 10th edition, man, it is some of the most balanced 40k has ever been. Personally, I know some people disagree. Personally, I think the Index era from 8th was like the most balanced, but 10th edition is like, yeah, dude, you guys are living the good days right now. It is funny, though, with the most recent codexes, so Orcs and Chaos Space Marines, I do not think at all, not even in the least bit, that either of them are busted or overpowered, but they are very powerful. And it does make you wonder, like, is GW, like, giving up on the killiness thing? Are we going back to, like, 9th, 7th edition style? Like, I guess we'll see as time goes on. I don't really think so, but, you know, you do have that thought in the back of your head. I think, as of 10th edition, Warhammer's probably the most popular it's ever been. Like I mentioned earlier, that Amazon show's coming out soon, and you best believe Warhammer's gonna be, like, way more popular. We're gonna have a bunch of, man, I wish I knew the word for it, but you're gonna have a bunch of people who don't actually care about the lore or the fluff or anything, acting like they do, and trying to change 40k and all that sort of stuff. I'm a gridly neckbeard. That said, I'm very open to everything. I don't think, alright, I want to touch on a touchy subject. I really shouldn't, but I will. The female space marines, like, fuck no, guys, come on, it's part of the lore. Not everything has to be, like, regenderfied or whatever. Not everything in the history of eternity needs to be, like, redone for that. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Otherwise, again, I'm very welcoming, guys. Like, I have so many friends of all different creeds and colors and orientations, like, okay. But female space marines, that's a step too far. Female custodies, I guess they decided to do it. It's too late now, but how I see that, Warhammer's always been, like, you guys get to make up your own lore, dude, in a sense. Like, obviously, you know, you got the base lore that you build off of, but you can choose to ignore something if you want to. You can choose to say, oh, that's a one-off. It's always been that my Chaos Space Marine Legion, dude, I could say they're Dark Angels. Oh, these are loyalist Dark Angels who came out of the warp. Yeah, they look corrupted, and, like, yeah, sure, they got the sigils on them. You know, I don't know how to explain that, but no, they're still loyalists. Doesn't matter. Like, you've always had your own way to do stuff, so if you want to, you can choose to ignore that sort of stuff. It's really not, like, the end of the planet if they do it. Female Space Marines, like, please don't, GW, or Amazon, I should say, please don't do it. You can bring a shitload of representation. 40k has been doing better on that lately, too, and I applaud them on that. For sure, dude, we needed more of that, for sure. Not only, like, gender, but also, like, other stuff. So, I hate touching on controversial subjects. Not all what I'm into, in the least bit. I hate arguing. Please don't be upset that I brought this stuff up. But the lore. So the lore, I hope that Amazon sticks to the lore pretty well. But for sure, 40k has gone mainstream. It's like we are mainstream now. So don't get too upset. The new people coming in, guys, you need to be welcoming and kind. Point them in the right directions. That's a huge part of my channel. Is I want people to like learn about playing. I want them to get better. I hate when people like send me an email and they say, you know, Fan Archon, I've never won a game. Like, what am I doing wrong? Man, I hate it. It breaks my little heart, my fat little heart. I hate hearing it. But yeah, 40k is very popular. It's only going to get even way more popular as time goes on. Once the Amazon show comes out, who knows what comes next? Maybe we'll get some movies. I am ultra excited for that, by the way. Henry Cavill, that guy's a boss. I do think people like hero worship him a bit too much, but like, yeah, dude, I think he's a chill guy. I'd hang out with him. Like, I'd love to play a game with him, of course. But yeah, it is cool to watch that, like, dude, 40k, I used to hide the fact that I played it from, like, girls. And definitely girls, and even my friends and stuff. There was no way. I literally, like, remember hiding my models and stuff. These days, I'm not making this up at all. I remember I painted my Great Unclean one. I loved it so much, I took it to my girlfriend's house and showed it off to her. I ended up having help her paint me models of my own and stuff. And she was like really hot, not at all into like nerdy stuff or whatever. Like it was actually kind of surprising I did that. I'm such a nerd. I took that Great Unclean one to my mom's house and I showed it to her. Showed her how I'm not making this up. How good a paint job I did. I will say my mom's pretty artsy. She's also like the kindest person on the planet Earth. Like you can't be kinder. And yeah, she used to teach us art class. So like she appreciated it. She made me feel good. I'm her little lovey-dovey son or whatever. So yeah, love my mom. But yeah, 40k is mainstream. It's only gonna get more mainstream. Now, as for the future of Warhammer 40k, yeah, I'm curious. Again, it's going to get more popular, but like gameplay-wise, I do wonder how it's going to go. 10th edition has done really well on the balancing, I would argue. Most armies are within just a few percentage points away from each other, like win-loss rate. So they're doing really good there. I do think Age of Sigmar has way more influence than some people like understand or care to admit. A lot of stuff, it seems like, they'll test in AOS. If it works out or they like it, they'll put it into 40k. So if you guys are curious about what the future of Warhammer will be, yeah, man, I would take a look at Age of Sigmar, see what they're doing. I do think GW's like supporting the tournament scene way more than they ever had before. Dude, their CEO, they used to have the worst CEO on the planet. Back when GW was like doing terrible, this was 7th edition era. He said something along the lines of, we're not a gaming company. We don't sell games. We sell models to collectors. We're a collector company. And his whole point was that collectors will pay a premium. I think that's what the question is, like, why are the prices so high? And he was saying, like, well, we don't give a fuck about the players. It's only the dumb whale collectors that we care about. So, luckily, 10th edition, they're doing infinitely better than they used to. I do think the game will just get better as time goes on. Who knows? GW loves to throw curveballs at us, but who knows? I do like that every new codex, you get at least one new model. Sure, it's always a freaking HQ or whatever, but hey, man, that's still nice. Now, I do feel bad for Gene Stealer cults. Like, come on, dude, they got way too many characters. Like, quit doing that. I don't like the legends either. I should have mentioned that on my issues with 10th edition, how they legended it so much, and how Forge World is like a bygone era. By the way, F in chat for Forge World. They were pretty awesome. They were like, dude, they were a way that you could like fix your army if you got screwed. Chaos Space Marines, I think it was 8th edition. They weren't that hot, as I remember. And yeah, you'd bring the Contemptor Dreadnoughts, and they would fix like everything up. Regardless, though, so the future of 40k, I think it's looking bright. That's about everything I want to cover. I know it's sort of rambling. Hopefully this has some like fun little like anecdotes and that sort of stuff with you, for you guys. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on this. How do you care about this format? Like, do you never want to see it again? That's fine. I want your honest opinions. Where my story's dumb? Am I a terrible person? Am I truly like win at all costs? I shouldn't be playing casuals? Like, let me know what you guys think. As usual, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and good luck out there, fellas.